Reforged video. Today we have the Battle of Helms Deep, but this is a sort of non-law friendly one, so do not expect to see the traditional setup. We have for ourselves a matchup with the Elves allied with Gondor, and they are taking on the forces of the Dwarves, the High Elves, so we've got a bit of inter-elf battle here, and a very strange alliance with, if we zoom over, Isengard, who have joined them. Now, the reason that Isengard are so far back is if you look at their deployment zone, this is a bit of a difficulty with this map in general, which causes people to spawn up on the hill mountainside, and it can sometimes work out that if you try and spawn anyone up here, your units tumble and fall to their death at the very beginning. So you can see that he's repositioned himself there back here, which is good for him. So yes, this isn't law friendly. In terms of the rules, there isn't really many that was of import. So we'll have a quick skim through the units and the setup, and then we'll get this underway. So in terms of the dwarves, they've got themselves a catapult, a few towers here. Slightly smaller army, so but still relatively healthy for a dwarven units, because normally you'd expect them to take some rather expensive ones and be even tinier than this. So they've got a good number of miners, which I think will be the arrow fodder and go straight into the fray. See, I quite like miners. Like, I think the numbers you get of them is quite large. I think they're quite entertaining, and I quite like the idea that these guys they're not actually warriors, but you know, because they're dwarves, they'll get stuck in regardless. Moving on to second row, he's got a bunch of warriors. Really, I think they're going to make up the sort of the bulk of the force, with some Ironfoot warriors behind, and with the crossbowmen. So these probably will be the pushers for any of the break points and the chokes. With the crossbows, we'll try and get some useful angles. He's gone for some Blacklock engineers. I'm guessing that they're going to be for any elites that they find, with sort of the standard elite force of taking one of everything of the expensive guys. Again, probably just for the final sort of stages, just to get that extra sort of battle out the way. But quite a good force, actually. Quite pleased. Possibly slightly lacking maybe on the ranged. I mean, having said that, I mean, he's got 4 ranged units, so forget what I'm saying. I think that he's probably okay, as long as he's with his allies. His crossbowmen will be fantastic for the purposes of when they get to the chokes inside, assuming they make it over the walls, and I can't see them failing to do so. Moving on then to the High Elves, who have themselves a ballista, followed up with some Phalas Lords, so a very strong unit. Possibly a little bit out in the open for such an expensive unit. I imagine that the defenders are going to have siege weaponry and artillery, so he's got to be careful. Swordsmen are going to be his main pushers. Quite a strong unit to send in early. They'll definitely be good at taking the walls. Not sure if I'd want to use them sort of into the grinder straight away, because he's going to be the first sort of units taking the onslaught, and he's going to possibly lose some valuable forces. He's got some cheaper missile units at the back with the Boquindi, and then the spearmen, which again standard in most forces. Got some long spears, again, always handy for the pokey. And then he's got his elites, so he's got a bunch of guards and some smiths, which is probably where his general is. Relatively solid force. I mean, the thing is, what I would say about High Elves is that they've got expensive units, so to have what is relatively a strong-sized force for what is quite difficult to make anything with good sort of breadth. He's still been able to get a reasonable amount, and this is probably where, excuse me, the majority of the, I guess, death toll will come from. I think the Uruk-hai are going to be the forces that'll take most of the kicking. He has got himself sort of the trolls of the White Hand, as you can see here. There they are, getting all ready with their sort of markings on the shoulders. We've got some Uruk-hai archers. A lot of Uruk-hai archers, a lot of crossbows. So it looks like the majority of the ranged sort of attack force from this sort of the attackers is going to come from the Isengard units. In fact, they seem to have quite a plentiful amount of ranged units, possibly because they knew they were going to deploy further away, and therefore they aren't going to be able to take many hits as early. But they have got the Berserkers, which is always a really great unit to have. He's got the Uruk-hai Bodyguards. Now, for those of you who haven't seen Uruk-hai Bodyguards, they do look like a big army of Lurts, which is quite funny. But they are looking quite sort of floaty swordy, but they all just spawning in really. I was hoping he might take some Nazighai because they look really fantastic. He's got some guards of the Orthanc, which are great at holding the line. The Pikemen, again, I think you have to have these as a standard in any of your Uruk-hai units and armies. You can see there they're all looking pretty sweet. I do have to say that I think that Isengard, my feeling is that when they made these for the theatrical release, I think they did an epic job. I mean, ultimately, they've got the case where, in terms of the culture and design of orcs, for the most part, you know, you could get to the point where they all look extremely samey, that they don't look very distinct, that the culture and the separation between the forces could be quite limited. But I was really impressed how Isengard turned out. I loved the touches, like when they didn't have armor on their back because they aren't meant to flee from battle, like. And you can instantly tell the difference between these guys and say standard orcs or warrior orcs. Moving on, so his infantry is going to take the main brunt. I imagine probably what we'll see is actually these all just get dropped. I can't imagine he's going to wheel any of these around to take on the siege, not when his allies have so much closer. He's actually taking two sort of siege weapons. He's got the ballista and a catapult, which I'm sure will be useful towards the end. And that's a bit from him. So yeah, just the again, quite a strong force. It looks like like I said, he's not short on range. A good number of crossbows from the dwarves and from Isengard. So the heavy armor of the Gondor and the Elves that are going to be defending, they're possibly going to struggle a lot more than they would say if they were going against archers. But moving on now to the defenders. So you can see here up on the walls, getting ready to take on the assault. They have Haven Guard. Wow, so a very expensive unit on the front line here. Now, if that was me, I'd possibly not put them there. I mean, there's a few reasons why. Firstly, the ballista straight across from them, and the catapult's there. So even if they just hit the lower walls, these guys are going to start burning. I'd probably save them, hide them back, bring them up when the towers showed up, but I wouldn't start them on there. But that's the choice they've made. Again, another expensive unit, one White Tower, so they're definitely looking to hold this, which is fine. I don't have any problems with people looking to hold the walls, especially if you can get a good line of archers here to shoot up into them. But I probably wouldn't put them up there until I had to, and at least give a little bit of an opportunity for your ranged units to take some shots. So we got again, another expensive unit here with the Rangers, two sets of Rangers here. Like I said, behind them we've got the catapult, followed by some more archers, another catapult, some spearmen waiting in reserve, and again some woodland sentinels. See, I'd be tempted to say that the spearmen probably would have been better as a show of force if you wanted something up there, and the other guys could be ready to come up and support. But we'll see how it pays off. We'll see how long they stand. I think the main battle is probably going to happen in the upper tiers, though, which again strike me slightly strange. They've put such expensive units down in the opening section, but never mind. Again, Rangers lining along the wall in these big sort of large formations with the marksmen, some heavy archers up here. So I'm tempted to say that they have... Well, no, I suppose it's good to have the heavy archers further back. Now, the reason why is because they're the most likely to run out of ammunition and therefore the most likely to actually be useful in melee towards the end. At the main gate here, you've got the large bulk, so we'll come back to that as we look at the final tier inside. Again, we got some guards of Skiliath, sorry about that. I'm just surprised he's put them on the wall, really. Elder Palace Guard, probably the general's unit, that. Some cave trolls. I don't like Gondor taking cave trolls. Like, I know that they're randomly there, and actually I think that they've been removed now. So this must be a video from slightly early on, but I just don't like it. It just grates me to see it. It hurts deep inside. But we'll move on. We've got some more Palace Guard there, which are a great unit. I don't know if people have seen the way that they look, but they have such a like a wonderful sort of green design to them. I think it's really fantastic. And they've got wonderful masks as well. Hopefully, when the battle starts, I can get the camera to work a bit better in our favor, so you can get a better look at it. But you can kind of see them there. They've got these wonderful helmets and the sort of the like the Rangers, how they have the pull-up mask below. Right now to go to this mass, this horror that is sort of the merging of forces down here. Um, we've got some Blade Masters, fantastic unit. Really so good. If any of you have seen the video where we were doing Phalandral's Halls, I had my generals unit, which were like Black Numenorians with the Witch King leading them, and it was a unit of 33, and they charged a unit of 6 Blade Masters. They Blade Masters lost none of their 6 from the charge. I lost 1 unit. It was my general. So it was really quite punishing, and that was in 1 charge. Citadel Guard, always useful to have, especially for the choke. Heavy Spearmen again. So it looks like they're definitely bringing a lot of units forward to try and defend this main gate, but that could work against them. Again, the attackers aren't short of sort of artillery, so he's got to be a little bit careful about how bulky he gets here. He's got some expensive units ready and waiting. What I would say, there's some Marines there. Get some nice jabs going. What I would say is that the defenders are not short of expensive high tier units. So in terms of the value they've taken with them in terms of cost, I mean that's a healthy amount. I mean the balance of power is still definitely against them, but I imagine we'll see that change relatively quickly based on what I can see in terms of the forces they're taking with them. The question is whether they can keep many of them safe, I guess, as we see as we go forward. But what we'll do is we'll get the battle underway and we'll see how they go. So the interesting thing will be here is whether the High Elves look to wait for their ally Isengard to get to them, or whether they decide that them and the dwarves are just going to start making their move. So we're just going to finish off the last of the deployment phase, it would seem, before we get started. While we do wait, I'd just like to let everyone know that we do have a mini competition going currently, which is that for the first 100 followers of our Twitch channel, we'll be put into a prize draw to win sort of $10. And all you have to do for that is follow and sign up. And the other one is that we do now have a Patreon with special rewards at different tiers for all values. So if you want to support the community and you want to help sort of continue what we do, then please show your support. We're always grateful. As I continue to wait for this this deployment phase to continue. Right, it does look like they're going to start moving some of their more expensive units from where they were before. So you can see the Haven Guard no longer up there. The Woodland Warriors have come into a secondary support, probably when the towers arrive. We can still see the Marksmen and the Rangers at the front, but I'm not surprised by that considering the value of the units they've taken. So Spearmen ready to support. Catapult probably isn't going to move. Heavy Infantry Archers to fire over the walls. Rangers probably getting ready to be stretched out there. And again, there you go, and the Spearmen there. I imagine we'll probably see the bulk of these guys start spacing out as well while they continue off the last of their deployment phase. And we'll see whether they still position themselves as it was at the start of the battle and how much of a move. They still seem... Oh, and we've begun. So, we can see here that we've got... Ugh, bloody hornbug. So you can see here that we've got most of the elven archers are going to be defending the this sort of width along here, and this wall. Most of their melee units seem to be okay. So most of the melee units up here seem to be Gondor, with the archers being the elves, and down in the lower tier we seem to have sort of a mix of the two, but mainly the elven melee units are going to take it on. We do have the High Elves are going to push up. Seemingly, the Dwarves are going to hold back and wait, and I guess Isengard will just make their way over as and when they can, whilst the Swordsmen take the brunt of the assault in loose formation. We have a lot of arrows coming out at this point. Really going for it. I probably would have held maybe some of the damage. He has moved his Blade Masters up to here, so he's obviously concerned about this tower, so you can actually make it through here. So what's probably happened is he's using these guys to defend a rather key location where you can get quite a large push, and if you can get your units up here, especially your archers, and hold that area, you can make it very difficult for the defenders. We can see here that Gondor is starting to move more of his spearmen over. Now he sees what the positioning and format's going to be. They are going to try and bash down this wall here. This is coming from the Dwarven catapults, I believe, as more and more of the High Elves move over to this side. So I think what we'll probably see is a combined push through this breakpoint here, and these towers will probably move up, and then these guys will probably be a show of force, so they can't move anything, and maybe try and catch out some of these archers. While the main attack probably goes through there. So they'll probably try and lock down some of these expensive units, maybe. Or at least make it so that the defenders have to fight multiple fronts while they push through. I can't imagine too long before these guys make it through, and you can see now they've started to reposition the catapult already. Probably they're going to try and do a crossfire either down to here or up here. It was always difficult, this map, for a defender in points of view of the way the catapult works. The best place I've ever seen a catapult really positioned is actually back here. So when you do the last stand, you can fire through this hole. As you can see now that the attackers have relatively quickly for considering taking down the wall already. And you can see that they have got a spare catapult here, which they'll probably use for that point with those cave trolls. They are starting to pull back their ranged units. I imagine what we'll see is a line forming here, which will be to shoot up towards them. Some of them seem to be a little bit glitched on there as the melee units are preparing to probably storm up. Now, the interesting thing will be whether he wants to fight them up on the wall or whether he'll just position his melee units just at the bottom of the stairs. Now, he has got his Blade Masters ready for any sort of charge up the side, so he could in theory do that, but I think he is going to go up and position himself on the walls. But as it stands, the elves are not in any massive hurry to get up on the wall. It does look like they're all going to pile into the one tower for the most part, and this one here again probably just try and block them off. But again, I don't think there's too much of a concern here as they start piling in against the wooden warriors. So what is interesting is that although they've made the break point here, and you can see the spearmen are now moving over. I was going to say there was an opportunity there to possibly break through, but they've chosen instead to use their Quindy missile unit, which is, I guess, relatively for what they are, inexpensive. And if they can make them be a target for archer fire, I suppose that's a victory for them because, again, that's arrows that aren't going towards their main units. Interestingly enough, they are going to try and make a second breakpoint in the wall, possibly because they've seen the units that have gone that are going up, and maybe they feel like it's better to have two breakpoints. It could be because they're concerned about this sort of formation that they're seeing forming on the other side, and they really don't want to waste their units against the walls if they don't have to. And we can see now that Gondor is starting to move his units. It'll be interesting to see actually. It's one of those times where you really kind of wish maybe you'd taken a cav unit because you could have charged those and got quite a lot of kills and possibly taken out their ballista quite early, as the dwarven miners are only now catching up with their ally. Again, most of their forces haven't even moved themselves off the hill. Like it's like they kind of wait for the ninth day or whatever in the sunrise to come over the top of the mountain. But if you had some cavalry, even he could have considered charging his spearmen out. He could have maybe locked down these guys early and maybe gone for the ballista quickly. And now, admittedly, he did have the lords ready at the back, but you know, nothing sort of I can't remember the term, but basically, you could gamble it and give it a shot, but nothing ventured, nothing gained is what I was looking for. As again, these two walls are slowly being pounded down by the catapult, and you can see that he's going to withdraw his own after the ballista has sniped out one. So it is getting a nice shot over the top of the wall from where it's positioned, and you can see from the view of the elves that they have an opportunity to maybe take out a second one as well. And now the spearmen have pushed out. A little too late, possibly. I think now that they've actually caused themselves into a bit more problems than they'd wanted, because they're now out of formation in terms of what they'd like to be, and they can be flanked on multiple sides. I'm not quite sure if I'd done it that way. I think that these guys might get mopped up. Like they're already pretty confident of their own defeat, and they're against miners. Now it's not that miners aren't bad. I mean, they're good. They've got pickaxes and stuff, but I don't know. I wouldn't have wasted that unit in that way. As you can see here, that the Woodland Warriors have become victorious on here, and again, I think it won't take much longer for the High Elves to lose here. But again, I don't think that they wanted or expected to hold it for long. If anything, the reason they probably sent smaller amounts and they're not filling it in is because actually, if they fire any shots into that, they've got just as much chance of hitting their own units than they do with the attackers, and it just keeps them busy. It keeps them locked down as they start moving some more of their units over. But they have used the catapult to take out one of the siege towers. Now, there is a problem with this mod in general, which is the siege tower, although broken, will still take hits as though it was still there. So, again, they've lost a siege tower, but they've got plenty. And as much as I didn't think they'd do it, Isengard is bringing round theirs. They're going to march it all the way over as the second wall goes down for the inner breach. Though it'll be interesting to see if they work on the third one. But yep, here comes Isengard. Now, it looks like Isengard role is going to be the main gate, but I can't remember seeing... Oh, there's the ram, but that's the Elven ram. I don't remember seeing a ram from Isengard. But look how many siege towers they took. I mean, they must have just clicked the button until they couldn't take any more. Be interested to see if Isengard are going to be the ones assaulting the main gate. If so, they may need to borrow the elves to go and pick up their ram and bring it over for them. As you can see now that the dwarves are moving through with their miners, as the High Elves bring through some of the Blade Masters of their own. And they're going to flank around and clear up these spearmen with miners. What we'll see now, yeah, so they're starting to reposition their units, move them now that those points have been taken. Interested to see whether they'll keep the Woodland Warriors there if they're going to take them off of the top of the walls. It could be that they actually wouldn't mind if the Blade Masters go up there. Now, the Blade Masters have positioned themselves here to sort of give themselves a little bit of cover using the stairway. But you've got to be a little bit careful because the dwarves keep shooting at this wall with the catapult. As you can see here now, the catapult has changed position to shoot at this siege tower and has successfully destroyed it. I don't know whether the intention is to destroy those siege towers. Again, it's not like they haven't got many left over. So, okay, it's additional points that they can't then place siege towers later. But the battle out here is probably not going to last a massive amount of time. And there's a high possibility that those catapult shots could be better utilized later. As you can see here, yeah, the Blade Masters are now going to take on the Woodland Warriors and probably be quite successful in that. So the problem is that whilst they continue to fight over here, these ranged units are going to have no problem shooting over. And I think if I was a defender, I wouldn't mind the friendly fire if I had an opportunity to take out the Blade Master, they're a scary unit. And you can see here the miners have mopped up the small unit spearmen that were pushed through. As the ballista does repositioned itself again, probably to try and get a better shot on the catapult. It might be having a little bit of line of sight trouble with its own siege towers, so we'll see how that goes. As you can see, the third wall is got now at 77%. I would stop firing my catapult at these walls right now. It's not worth it. They're not defending this area. You don't need a third breach point. They're not going to retake it. If anything, that's probably just wasting the dwarven shots. But he's decided that that's where it's going to go, and that's what he wants to do. As you can see, the miners now coming up, probably looking for a charge at the ranged units. They are defended here by some Woodland Warriors who we expect to probably see. There you go. They're going to start fanning out now, and they're probably try and just sort of flank round and bottle these guys in. But again, I mean, the Dwarven miners, you've got to try and push it somehow, and these guys are as good a unit as any to take those hits and take some lock down these guys, because they're gonna have to stretch pretty far over to block it off, and if they can't stretch over completely, then there's an opportunity to get a better unit or more useful unit through. The miners aren't going to be fantastic as we get closer to the chokes, because they can't push as well as some of his other units. And here you go. Actually, you can see he's not been able to stretch himself far enough over. Okay, so what's happened is he's gone for the flanking attack on the spearmen. I'd have been tempted to actually go through and get these rangers. I would have probably seen if I could run through and just take him unawares. But whichever he positions to. As you can see now, the Bodyguard are continuing to move up. Again, I think this is a smart plan. It continues to have the archers busy firing at the Boquindi. The Boquindi have a relatively low armored unit to fire back to for the sort of the skirmish phase, and it saves any of the crossbowmen for later stages when the armor is thicker and the units are more elite. As you can see, the Isengard continue to make their way forward. And have left the siege left the siege ram there, like, you know, there you go. Now I don't know if this is their sort of sign that they aren't going to assault it. I think they will, and you can see here that they are firing catapult shots at the door. I don't know. I mean, there's a perfectly good ram was back here. I don't know why he just doesn't ask one of his elven ally just to push it up and take it out. But you can see he's moved himself into sort of a shield wall formation here, and he's doing it again here. Bit blobby. I mean, I'd be concerned of a bit of arrow bait there, and maybe even sort of artillery bait. But you can see here that actually, in the meantime, his catapult's going to get focused down. He's going to have to pull that out of there, I would have thought. I don't think he's going to be able to keep that unit alive long enough to take it out. As he moves up another siege tower towards the gate, it's going to park them there, I guess, like you park in a car. Now, it does give a little bit of arrow protection. Now, don't get me wrong, there is opportunities to use siege towers effectively, and one of those is that it is a blocker for, say, artillery, for, say, arrows as you're moving through. But if he wants to attack and assault this main gate, and he's probably going to want to do it while his allies are assaulting sort of on the other side, he has to consider sending that ram up. But right now, it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. As we move back over, we can see that the dwarves are going to start moving their way onto the walls. It looks like it has stopped now that it's got 18%. And these guys are probably going to jump over. Be interested to see whether he then tries to go through the top door gate there, or whether he uses this ladder here to come down behind the spearmen and see if he can go in for the rangers. I mean, he might be able to do it. Like, if you look here, here we go. So what we see now is the defenders are moving a unit to go and block off the dwarves from doing just that, I think. And they're going to try and hold the outer walls here as the miners continue to die in droves. Real shame. Like, I really think there was an opportunity to get his miners through to go for the rangers, because even a flanking attack on these guys, the dwarves didn't stand a chance. But he has got some crossfire going now with his Boquindi. As you can see, more of the dwarves now coming in to support the assault, and the spearmen are going to come in to try and lock against their opposing spear unit of their sort of elven brethren. Dwarves now coming in. It'd be interesting to see if he's going to just try and punch you through, or whether he's going to try and fight them. I'd almost be tempted to maybe consider punching through. It's a thin line. I mean, 3 deep at its worst, so he has got an opportunity here. You can see he's trying. Like, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but you can see that they are pushing, and it might be worth just pushing through entirely, battering them through, getting to the rangers. I mean, he's got his ally spearmen here. They can always flood in behind to hold and lock them down, and you might even make them break. Although, admittedly, elves aren't fantastic. Elves do have good morale, so it's quite difficult to break them. As you see, those spearmen took a rather nasty assault to the face of the archers, as we can see that the marksmen come in to lock them off before they could reach there. Again, I think that was an opportunity for the miners to do that a lot earlier, but Aragon there now coming in to take on these missile units. Again, I think they'll make short work of them. I mean, they're a good missile unit and they're elite, but I think the spearmen will take them out relatively quickly. As you can see now, the dwarves and the spearmen are very much engaged. I do think he can push through. Like, he could really push through, and nothing's protecting these guys now. And just for people so they're aware, the Ballista did finish off the last of this catapult unit. But there's nothing defending these guys. He could just charge through. Like, just push them. Just do the Dwarven push. Okay, he may lose a few of them, but he's got an ally. His allies here, ready to take up the slack. There's nothing. He could tear these guys apart with those warriors. But anyway, we'll see how it goes. They may have other plans. As you can see, the Ballista now coming in to aim for these rangers. I mean, they're as good of a choice as any. I think maybe I would have waited to see if there was a better target. Like, for example, I'd be tempted to maybe fall back some of my dwarves, and I could have gone for you could have gone for the wooden warriors. But we'll see what happens as Isengard. Well, I mean, they're protecting themselves behind their siege towers. Really, I think they're in there for the long haul. I can only assume that they are just going to wait until the assault on this choke point takes place. Maybe they'll send, yeah, so they're going to send a little bit of support round. Looks like mainly their ranged units are going to come around to help as the dwarves move some more of their units off their mountainside. A really good position here actually with some dwarven crossbows. If they could get the flanking fire rather than the bow quindi, I reckon that they could chew these guys up. I mean, you could even move them a little bit further over if you had a sort of a melee unit to help here. You could just attack them in the rear almost. But we'll see what happens as the ballista continues to do its work on this sort of ranger unit, slowly whittling them down. And the push from the dwarves seems to have sort of faltered now and slowed. But they're still relatively confident victory, and you'd hope so. I mean, they significantly outnumber what they're up against. So, and I think it won't take long for the last of the warriors to finish off the woodlands, which have these sort of large, sort of rather sickening axes that you can see. It's always a sad sight to see sort of brethren versus brethren, but not one we haven't seen, I suppose, with the humans. Considering the number of evil human factions that we constantly have fighting one another, it's sometimes good to see the elves sort of go toe to toe, try and prove which is the better elven race. If you want to have a conversation as opposed to an argument about which elven faction's better than the other and why, you can always do so in the commentary below. As the crossbowmen have now been pushed up. Again, I think there's an opportunity to have moved them here for a better line of sight, but there you go. And you can see that he has pushed some spear units forward now to lock down these rangers, stop them from being able to fire. Now, it looks like since either they aren't in guard mode, or he didn't want to put them in guard mode, or mystery option that they have run out of ammunition now. But either way, if they were in guard mode, there's a possibility their back lines could continue to fire while the front lines fight. But it could be that they're out of ammunition or he doesn't want to do it. They are relatively confident in their ability to win against 13 spearmen, so he might just want to try and clear them out as quickly as possible. But I'd be tempted if I still had ammunition to continue firing in guard mode. And you can see here that actually the marksmen still had ammunition. They were sent in to hold back the assault, but they've been pulled back now with ammunition, so they're going to continue to fire again. But that gap still exists. Like, it hasn't gone anywhere. They... I mean, even this gap just exists to flank around these spear units with something, just to finish them off. But I guess they're concerned about the ranged units that are still up on the upper levels, who I suspect for the most part are holding their ammunition, waiting for a better shot. Although he doesn't want to hold too long, and then miss an opportunity to take out some valuable units early on. But look at the Woodland Sentinels. Look how cool they look. I love how their sort of green armor is. Probably more so than the heavy archers. I do like the aesthetics. Again, Sin Kuro and the other sort of developers have done a fantastic job in their look and feel. Supported some cases by the Divide and Conquer team and some of the work that they've done in the past, but they do make models themselves and new unit types. And you can see now that the Uruk-hai archers have been moved forward again, probably as fodder really. Um, they're relatively cheap for what they do, and I suspect that they'll probably target these rangers just to see if he can clear them out of the hill. As you can see, the last of the marksmen are getting whittled down by crossbows. I probably wouldn't even bother. I mean, there's 3 of them left. How many of that ammunition is missing and hitting the turf? Again, probably move them here, probably shoot in, get these guys out. I mean, they're killing units. As much as they don't think they're going to win, they're killing melee units, and towards the end of this battle, it's going to be the melee units that are going to push through. He's just going to leave his artillery crew there. I mean, that's fair enough. I guess it's a unit to slow something down. As you can see, he's starting to form up his defense now. He's got a very strong front defense at the main gate. I'd be concerned about catapult and crossbow fire into this formation. However, he does obviously have the upper levels to defend him, and they did have quite a good sort of assault against the Isengard catapult, so much so he actually withdrew it. So yeah, it's over here now. It's got a unit of 5. So again, he moved it up a little bit too close and got punished for that. He's got to be careful. He loses 3 more of those that crew, and he's not going to be able to operate it anymore. As you can see, the dwarves are now making a push for the upper level. They will start popping through. They should start popping through soon. There they go. There we are. So you can see that they're popping up now to take on the Blade Masters, and some Blade Masters are actually going out to meet them. But this would be a difficult push. Interesting to know would have been whether these heavy archers still had any ammunition. But you can see as they start flooding in, really kind of just trying to push with sheer weight to get themselves up there. I mean, they'll hold for a while, but my money would probably be on the Blade Masters. But we'll see. I mean, you've got to try and assault this location. There's nothing else you can do. The only other thing you can do is go through this tiny space here, and you can see that actually Gondor has moved up his catapult. Would I have done that? I'd be tempted to not, because I know that ballista's still knocking around unless they, for some reason, have taken it out. I already know as well that Isengard has a second ballista, even if this had been destroyed. So you can see now that the elves are going to move this into position. I imagine they're going to target that catapult, and they're going to try and wipe it out while they can. And that's a shame, because that catapult can get hundreds of kills in chokes. And I think Gondor should maybe consider actually pulling that back. I mean, he's been spotted that he moved it up, and I think he is actually. I think he's realised the threat of the high off ballista, and he's going to get it out of there. And I think that's a wise choice. As you can see, the dwarves continue to fight up here. I think he maybe sent a second unit up to join them, or maybe still just one of the same. Yeah, still the same unit. I think, but he is starting to break from just a sheer sort of loss of life, I suppose. But it is a unit of 48. That's a real shame to see them broken. Hopefully they'll come back to the battle, as they're a good unit, and it'd be a shame to lose them relatively cheaply. You can see now that they've cleared off the last of the sort of spearmen that were holding. They held for some time. I think they could have got rid of them a lot sooner, but they have cleared them out now, and the next phase of the assault will begin. Be interested to see what kind of arc the crossbows get. I think that they'll struggle with this sort of positioning, whereas I think what we'll see is now that the heavy archers will take the opportunity to shoot these guys who have held fire for some time. And actually, they look to be heading for this ballista crew. So poor Isengard, and actually the High Elves, they're moving their ballistas together, and Isengard have already had struggle with their catapult, which didn't really get to have any shots going for them, and they may have struggle now with their ballista crew surviving. This is a good target for the ballista as well. While they form up in front of the wall, you might as well shoot it. I mean that's a good clump. It looks like there's actually multiple units there. Again, I wouldn't have sent multiple units up. If you see what's looking to come and face them, one unit would be able to hold off these guys. I mean, admittedly, he's moved the Smiths up quite far into the fray. If I was on the wall, I'd be tempted to punish them for that. But ultimately, this isn't a huge force that are currently preparing at the bottom of the hill. I wouldn't suggest you needed to put 1, 2, 3, 4 layers in front of this gate, because that's an opportunity that ballista could go for. And it does feel like the crossbows are having a little bit of trouble with the arc, so it looks like the archers of the Uruk-hai probably going to be doing most of the work here, as I'm not quite sure if the crossbows are really hitting their target very much. As you can see here, that actually the blade masters of the defenders is coming down. I don't know whether that was intentional. It looks like they're trying to clear out some of these crossbows. I mean, it's a bold move, and I'm not against it, but you can see here, there you go. There you go. Just as I thought. So, they've been able to set their ballista up now. They've got a good target on that door, and every time they move something in there, that's going to get shot down. So they've had to withdraw, but they've lost units there for cheaply for no reason. Like, they didn't have to, especially if they're pushing their blade masters forward. There's a great chance here that actually you want to coax them in. You want them to come into there, and then you just close the door with these guys. He's got to be careful though, because if I was the dwarven crossbow unit, I'd be firing into that. Like, I'd see that as a fantastic opportunity to get rid of an expensive unit. And this was the main defender of up here alongside the secondary unit. But, I mean, you can take out these guys without having to lose anybody. I think that's a mistake, possibly a miskick. It was probably charging down maybe a routed unit. And, yep, that's going to hurt. It doesn't feel like he's seeing it still. As you see some of the trolls of the White Hand moving forward and repositioning themselves, and some of the berserkers. But the ballista for Isengard is down to 14, whereas the High Elves are still healthy. Like, they've been very good at positioning themselves outside of the range of the defenders, which less so for Isengard, who seems to struggle. As this looks like it might be the second. Yeah, so the second Blade Master unit has now come down. Now, one thing they've got to be careful of. Yeah, okay, before I could tell them, or before I could say it. This now cannot be used. The attackers can now no longer get up on this wall to go through that door. And that's a terrible, terrible mistake. Now, it could be that the movement of these Blade Masters was genius in disguise. It could be that I've completely wrong about them. It wasn't a misclick, and it was fully designed to coax the catapult shots to destroy this part of the wall. But what's happened now is that the attackers, they've lost one of their 3 points to break through. And I would be rubbing my hands as a defender, because there's no point putting a melee unit here anymore because they can't get there. And what did he do? I mean, he lost some of them, but he would have lost more if he had to defend it. These guys now, they can be reused elsewhere, and that's punishing. Like, but there we go. As we can see, I think they're going to use Ballista now to try and take out the gates. Again, I mean, I'm sure there's a reason they aren't using the ram, but I think I'd probably save the shots myself. As we see berserkers sort of getting ready in formation, and still healthy. I mean, we've still got a lot of numbers here, and these guys haven't been committed at all, and especially for the dwarves, a lot of them are much more elite units. As we will quickly go and see what the defenders are looking like in terms of, is that the ice? Yeah, so this is the Isengard catapult. Oh my goodness, they're so close to not being able to use it. Defenders must be gutted that they haven't been able to finish him off, but in the same sense, if they had done, he wouldn't have blown up the wall like he did. So you can see that the first I think the first preparations for a token assault into here is taking place. Again, it could just be a small number of units to come in to draw over the Citadel Guard to fire the ballista through the door. I mean, if I saw a tiny unit, I'd probably just let them come in and just work them down rather than move that unit forward. But we'll see. I think the ballista is going to target that as soon as it walks through. Large numbers still for the defenders back in the main town centre, and you can see this is where the catapult ends up moving to, and I don't blame them for that. But this is what I want to say. If I was an attacker, this is what I would save my catapult for to use against, and as a defender, it's what I would save it for, again, to use against the attackers. But I don't know really what the attackers are going to have left in catapults, because they've struggled a bit, because the defenders have been quite good at taking them out. I mean, Isengard really need to keep that alive. It's going to have a lot of ammunition still, because they hardly got to fire, but it could really rack up some kills if they use it effectively and keep it alive, and I don't think they will at this point. So let's have a look at the view from the Citadel Guard's point of view. As they look out, they can see the entire army stretched out before them from where they are. So that must be relatively daunting for them. Oh, and it does look they do have some Nazakai. There you go. I'll go and have a look at them for you. I didn't see them before. Where are they? There's the Nazakai. So we'll just quickly zoom over and show you the Nazakai. This is a fantastic unit, really great. So you can see here they've all got sort of the general's helmets upon them, and you can even see this is the general's unit himself, and there's Saruman, who they fight for to the death. And we'll head back over and see what it looks like here. Again, I think that they are, from a defender's point of view, relatively confident that they're not going to get attacked through the main gate. So as an attacker, you've now left yourself one option because you haven't broken through this front gate, and it's not falling anytime soon on 25%. So you've got this one choke basically now, and you've used a lot of ammunition, ultimately taking out areas of the wall you didn't need to, and one which you really didn't want to. So this leaves one area where they're going to have to just throw themselves into. Now you could leave a token force, a little support unit there, just in case they do break through it, but you're almost assured that 90% of the units right now are going to have to charge through this one area. Yeah, they're even going to take their siege towers back. So now it could be they're moving it out the way, and it might be they'll go and get the ram. I really don't think they will, though. They're actually going to move their catapult back up again. So they're going to try and hit the main gate of the catapult. I think it's a mistake. I think they're going to... They're at risk of losing these units. But currently it looks like the ballista must be out of range of anything that's shooting at them. So, you know what? If they want to keep firing at the gate, they can keep firing at the gate. I just don't think this is the way I would have done it, and certainly not this late into the battle. But we'll see what happens. You can see now that the Citadel Guard have now engaged with a small unit of Quindi swordsmen who are probably out of ammunition, and a depleted warrior unit. Again, I think this would be the time to consider using the ballista again on that location. I'd almost have been tempted not to use the warriors, just have the Quindi here with 32 units just there, and just fire the ballista as much as possible into the unit there. Maybe even consider just like lining up the warriors just in case these guys broke, just to keep that pressure on. But yeah, you can see he's now removed his melee units from up on the walls because he doesn't need them. A lot of movement, I suppose, in a sense, so units running from one side back to the other side. But I think the problem is that for the attackers right now, it's quite a difficult decision they need to make, and the difficult decision is how many lives they want to lose trying to take this one choke point. And you can see that he's actually going to move up more ranged units forward, and I don't blame him. He's got an opportunity to make the most of fighting in this outer area. And he's moving his sort of marines up. Now that's not a bad idea. Like, the marines should get range down towards the front door. Now the Citadel Guard probably don't need to be there. I mean, he's going for a box defense, which is fine. I don't think he necessarily needs to have that unit there. But once they come through, the jabs should be able to shoot down and fire onto this area, which would be advantageous. But really, I think we'll see a few of these getting repositioned now and then. But I think we're going to start seeing that sort of line start creeping along. But looking at here, we can see that the allies who have lost sort of 39% against the attackers that have lost 35. So in terms of the war of attrition, the attackers aren't doing bad. Like, they're keeping their units alive, and generally, as a defender, you want that to really be in reverse. Now, partly it's because the defenders probably have fewer units, which we would obviously naturally know, and also those that they do have are quite elite. But in the same sense, the attackers have thrown away relatively cheap units like miners in droves. And so actually the cheap kills, I guess, from the attackers have gone. As you can see, they have now finally taken down the front gate. These guys, I'd move them out of this position. Isengard, if he's wise, will move up his crossbows and fire straight through that hole, especially as there doesn't seem to be the most archers in the world. The majority of the archers have now moved over to this sort of this choke point on the side here. So he does have an opportunity to move up his skirmishers, as we can start seeing the Isengard trolls have come in to start making work of this defense. I think there was an opportunity to continue to have a bit more of a ballista contest here. I'm not sure how useful the ballista's going to be towards the end when they get a bit more into a tight sort of confines, but I think the ballista could have, whittled down some of these guards of Osgiliath early. But he is going to move his smiths in, so the smiths are going to start pushing through, and it looks like they're going to just use a little bit of sheer weight to make their way through this location, and that's fair. I think they have to at this point. That's a lot of Ironfoot warriors, so they're going to push pretty hard here. What they need to do is they need to time it with Isengard, and actually, since Isengard hasn't moved up anything, I'm surprised the defenders are holding this position with so many units. I'd be tempted take this Fountain Guard, take this Citadel Guard, take these Swan Knights, and you got to plug up this hole. Like this is dangerous. Like if the attackers push through here enough and take it, these guys are instantly outflanked, and they can mop up what remains in this location with Isengard's support. He can't lose this point. This is where he should be doing his kill ground. I'd be moving these Marines over right now if he hasn't already. He's moved some of them over, so he's got one of his units over. But I'd be moving them over to really, this needs to be punished. I'd almost be tempted because it's so critical to the battle right now. Move the catapult up and shoot in. I mean, there's no skirmishers there, so his catapult's relatively safe. His biggest risk is killing his own units, but he's got to consider that because look at it. The good news is, for the defenders at least, is that the dwarves are breaking, but once they've got this far in, we're probably going to see them more likely to just break and continue to fight. As I don't know if that troll's broken. No, he's just the last one of his kind. He's just taking it slow. I mean, this is where you want to break them here, as they continue to flood in like a sea. And you can see he has moved some units over. He is bringing some of his reserves who have run out of ammunition forward, and he's holding his Haven Guard back, which is fine. Like I probably would as well for a unit that's expensive. But you can see that they're doing the push. They are going to try and block off and lock off this location. And if they continue to move units in, they're going to own this base. But you can see here that finally Isengard have now come to join their ally, although they seem rather tentative about doing so. He doesn't seem to really want to get stuck in. Again, I'm not quite sure where his skirmish line is to support his main infantry. He is bringing up his ballista, it would appear, to try and help punch through that location, but really it just appears... Oh, there they are. So these guys will come up soon. I don't know whether I feel he's committing maybe a few too many units at this stage. As you can see that they have now lined up some of their own skirmishers on the walls, but since they haven't started firing yet, I guess this is the opportunity to make your way through the front gate, because if you don't now, maybe you won't ever. But it is quite a death trap to come into. I think that I'd be wanting to have my archer support sooner rather than later. One thing to remember, though, if you are doing this, he has left these doors open here and here. So if they can make this unit break, or they can push this unit enough... Yeah, so they're routing there. Oh, unit of 100! 100, guys! That's... I mean, you can't be losing that kind of unit value in terms of numbers so healthy. Hopefully they'll come back to battle. But if he could push through, he could get up onto these through these gates, get up onto the walls, and unless he wants to break formation to chase them, he can make himself up here and start working his way back through these lines again. And I'd be tempted, if I was an attacker, to do that. I'd be tempted to have one of my units go this way, one of my units go that way, try and sneak my way up the gates either side. As the push continues here, but it does seem to be slowing down. They are starting to be worked back, and he did commit his Haven Guard, which is helping to that. But the sheer numbers will start pushing them back towards this main gate hole here. And we'll see how that's changed with the kill count. You can see they are starting to close in, but they are still... There's the ballista shots coming in, which is what I was hoping to see before. But you can see that they are starting to make it a little bit closer. However, the allies are still losing more units, which is a shame for them because they are going to be more expensive units as well. But the ballista is going to start firing in, probably aiming for these Haven Guard, and I think that will probably be the best target. But if they continue to push forward like this, then they're going to continue to open themselves up to being whittled down, I guess. As you can see, there's long spears coming in, probably just to hold the line, to allow... To force, I guess, the defenders to move units in. I mean, I'd be tempted to maybe use his depleted heavy archers to block off that area if he needed someone to go up against the long spears. So you can see here that the Uruk-hai archers of 111 are breaking now. The second unit of trolls have now been committed, but they haven't got the support of any infantry. So I imagine we'll see the Fountain Guard and the Wardens clear these guys up relatively quickly for all intents and purposes. But we'll see what happens. Again, Gondor is very keen on holding his formation, but there is that chance. I mean, he could even have sent his trolls up through these gates. Now, think what would have happened if he'd sent his trolls up onto the walls to take on these archers. I mean, that'd be a much better matchup for him in terms of how that would play out than, say, going up against Fountain Guard. But we'll see what happens. He is starting to make his push now. He is starting to move his infantry in, and he has got his remaining catapult and his ballista at the front gate. But because he's moved so many of his infantry into this gate now, he's not really going to have an opportunity to fire that catapult just yet without risk of losing like 50% of his force. Until he clears this through a little bit, he's not going to be able to make the most of this, which is why I was thinking he might want to have made more of the skirmish phase. If I was on the walls, however, although having said that, they have taken out their swords as opposed to their bows, I'd be tempted to just finish off the 3 units of catapult crew if I had some archers left. But I probably would have sent some melee units up here by now. And you can see he's now starting to block it off. He's obviously seen the risk there. He hasn't seen the risk here because he hasn't blocked it up there, but he obviously feels that there is a possible concern that needs to be ready for. As you can see, the Blade Masters positioning themselves along with the depleted Woodland Sentinels. But still, a much better matchup for his infantry than going up against these Fountain Guard and Wardens. As you can see that the Marines are repositioning themselves now. Still large numbers of units left in reserve, so they still have a healthy supply for the defenders, including the Cave Trolls. But the good news is at least the Cave Trolls aren't a fantastic unit compared to some of the others. So it does look like the ballista is finding its mark, but unfortunately it looks like for each shot the ballista's using, it's taking out a little bit of his own men. Again, you could argue that it is taking out, expensive units. But the loss of his own, I mean, he can afford it right now because they're still doing okay. They're still bidding on the percentage kills ratios. You see both armies now down roughly to half what they should be. There's a couple of missed shots coming in from the ballista. I had thought maybe see, one thing I consider if I was a defender, if I had archers, since I know that he can't come and get me anymore here, I'd be tempted to actually move, say, my Marines or my archers down here and throw. I mean, that's a great, great target. Like, there's Dragon Slayers there and Guards of Khazad Dûm. Get your Marines here, throw the Javies in. There's almost hardly any response they could do to you. And they definitely can't send any melee units against you. So you might as well just try and get as many of your jabs off as possible into the sides of these guys, into this blob here, and get sort of rack up some good kills before these guys can get up inside and start causing problems for you. We are now starting to see the more elite forces from the dwarves come in. Again, I suspect that these guys are going to come in to try and push the line and try and ruin the formation as Isengard start throwing in more of their forces into the slaughter. So he's down to 1 troll again already. I didn't think they'd last long against sort of strong forces, but I guess he was running out of options as he starts moving more and more of his men inside. This is a bit sort of into the slaughter, so to speak. But you can see he has got some of his units now up on the wall. He did get them up there. He's got some crossbows that have been able to sort of slink their way in stealthily. And you can see these are in guard formation. So the rear guys are shooting while the front guys continue to fire. And you can see that the crossbows are making short work of these guys because the front unit will just always hold while the second one sort of lines up and continues to fire to make this choke. Now this only will be successful if they can hold this and stop Gondor from sending up units to support them. Because without proper infantry here, these crossbows are slightly vulnerable. But you can see here on the wing that we've got more and more crossbows moving forward now, and the catapult still has its 3 units, so he's still alive as the crossbows continue to shred their way through the elves that are trying to stand to oppose them. And I don't think these guys will be able to stand for too long, but the heavy archers are now lining up to fire, and they are starting to go for these blobs, probably shooting for the pikemen as the pikemen come in to try and clear out more of this sort of defensive location here. I think we've got quite a few berserkers coming in try and support that. I'd be tempted to have saved the Berserkers myself, especially if I knew I had so many pikemen that would join the fray. And you can see now that up on the wall where the Blade Masters are coming, they can't actually make it through their own units. So they've got some of their allied units here blocking them from being able to come in and taking out the crossbows. And we can see here that we've got more units coming up onto the top of the walls. It's the Nazak High, which I guess the Nazak High have been brought up to try and take on the Blade Masters. You see, he actually pushed his Blade Masters. He knew he couldn't get through his own units normally, so he's forced them through, because if they stood there lying at wait at the back of their own sentinels, they would have been shot down by the crossbows. But Isengard, whether they noticed it or not, has rightly brought their Nazak High up to try and take out these Blade Masters, and I think they'll do a good job. It's a risky maneuver for his general, but I think it has to be done. If you can get rid of these Blade Masters, it gives him a free reign now then just to work along here, just removing these guys out, and the Nazak High will make short work of an archer unit, and they'll probably just move their way around taking them out, assuming that the archer units don't pepper them down, because they don't have the most armor in the world. But I think that this is a good matchup for them. They can work through here with the general and don't hopefully lose the general. He is quite into the fray. They'll be able to finish off the rest of what remains on the wall, whilst Isengard continues to send more and more units into the slaughter. It's hard now to understand who is actually alive and fighting, and what is just a dead body. As you can see that the archers are now making the most of this blobbing effect that they've got here. I don't think this is going to change anytime soon. So we'll go and have a quick look at the other entrance, where fewer but more elite units are coming in. So you can see here we've got the Dragon Slayers and the guards supported by some long spears. And he's going to try and make a push, I guess, towards the Marines. And you can see here he's trying to flood them through, but I don't think he's going to have much luck pushing through Haven Guard backed up with dismounted Swan Knights. But again, I think it might be he's trying to get to this door maybe so he can get units up on the walls. I mean, that's a possibility. Or he just wants to try and stop Marines from fighting. I think if he was going to make a push, he'd probably have just as much luck pushing through the heavy archers, if not more. But we'll see what happens. We'll see if he sends units up through the door onto the walls, or whether he gets cut down by Haven Guard and how that matchup between them goes. But yeah, I think I would have been tempted with my Marines to try and get them over here, especially now as we can see that the guardsmen from the Elves are moving forward, and they're going to keep trying to make more and more of a breach point, I guess, for themselves. You can see now that they're starting to work against the defenders. As much as the kills are now similar, the units that are remaining are going to be the more elite sort of attackers, and Isengard are just getting torn to shreds here. I mean, it's literally just shooting fish in a barrel. They have been able to take the wall now. They have been able to get their crossbows up there. The crossbows haven't really been, utilized much up until now, so they're going to be relatively good with their ammunition. And yeah, so you can see that the Sword Masters didn't stand against the Nazak High general unit, and now he's going to start continuing, I suspect, to do what I thought he would, which is work his way around the top. And you can see, yeah, they did push for that door. So the dwarves are making their way up onto the walls here. I guess what they want to do is finish off the last of these units, possibly even maybe bait the defenders to try and come up into this choke point of their devising instead, so that they can turn the tables upon them. Maybe bring them up here. If they don't, however, the crossbows are going to probably be more than happy to fire down into there, although they look like they're looking for a different target. They're actually shooting up into this blob. I think if I had the crossbows, I'd be considered trying to save my allies down here. As you can see that the Wardens are probably going to make a push now for this door, which they are, and they're going to come in right behind the crossbows. I think I probably would have wanted to try and make the most of taking out these units, as they can see that the first beginnings of them make their way up towards the crossbows now. And you can see that they've all started pulling out the swords and they've stopped firing. I don't think they had the arc for there. I don't think that was as useful of a target. And the catapult is down to 2 crew, so they did finish off the last of them. Unfortunately now as well, the catapult and the blister is harming him more than it ever helped him, because his own units now are struggling to get past. So he's having to reposition it, but that could possibly have held him up a little bit with this formation. His Blister crew does still have a crew of 14, so he needs to think about how he wisely wants to use it. I don't think he's had the most opportunity up until this point to really get it into play and really sort of have it sort of make the most for him as we zoom in now to see the guards of Orthanc. I think I can see here trying to go toe to toe with the dismounted Swan Knights. You see now that the Swan Knights themselves, I think, relatively confident. I don't think, again, that they're going to have too much pressure here. The good thing about, like, the Guards of Orthanc is they're very good at holding locations, but sometimes pushing them, they struggle a little bit more than, say, actually a normal Pike unit could probably push a little bit better than the Guards of Orthanc. But, I mean, they're a classic. I don't think you can have an Isengard army without the Guards of Orthanc, but like I said, they're a little bit more about a defensive unit than perhaps an attacking unit. You can see the first shots, the sort of the final shots of the catapult going. I'd almost I mean, they can't really break the wall, but I'd almost be tempted to hold it back. I mean, he's so risky losing one of those sort of crew members right now loses everything, and he's brought up both his ballista and his catapult into this one blob. I think it's madness. It's just tempting fate. Um, to make the most of this. But I suppose he's relatively confident, I guess, that he doesn't think that the attackers are gonna, sorry, the defenders are gonna move their catapult out, and actually they're not, because I think that ballista has now repositioned itself. So if he does bring it out, the ballista is gonna try and make the most of it. So it could have been, a bit of a taunt. He wants the defenders to bring their units out, or he wants the defenders to push. Now, the biggest problem he's got is that the defenders will push, and I think they'll be quite successful. The Swan Knights will have no problem locking up formation and pushing forward. Now, he has flooded it quite well, but that's dangerously close to the front lines. If he does push, well enough, he can retake this location. He can force these guys back out again. And if he can do that, then he can again, continue to make short work of these guys. As you can see here now, the Palace Guards have come through this back gate here. So you can actually send units through here, which he has done. So the Palace Guard now, I'm going to see if I can get the picture of their faces, which I was trying to get before, as they now go toe-to-toe with the Nazakai, which would be quite a close matchup, relatively speaking. And I think the Nazakai might even lose against the Palace Guard. They're that good. But you can see here that they've fantastic mask, and I really like the sort of the grey and sort of bronze that they've got on their uniform as they start cutting their way through. So I'm really impressed to see how they're doing. I think they will probably work their way through this general's unit, and partly I think that this was sort of it was a good idea by Isengard. I think that it was the right thing to do. I just think it wasn't necessarily the tactic wasn't executed as firmly as it could have been, and they now risk the problem of having the tables turned on them really. And actually, if the Palace Guard clear out this remaining generals unit, now they have the opportunity to work their way around through this crossbow. As they do get a good shot off, actually. I'm quite impressed. That's a good fire. So I don't think they got any friendly fire for quite a good hit. So what he's going to do is he's going to fire now over into these more expensive and tempting targets. I think I would probably consider heading for this, because if you can get some wardens, you can get some sort of swordmen, and he can get the wardens, and I think there's some Haven Guard as well. And he almost doesn't run the risk of hitting his own units if he targets this way. I think that was a fantastic shot, but risky. I think maybe I consider maybe getting a line through there, especially since the Phallus Lords are now making a push. I'd be tempted to hold off that rather aggressive push while the catapult continues to fire. If the catapult had lost its crew, then I would have pushed. But even if he does make these guys break, they're only going to break back to the town centre. So, and here you go. So he's done. He may have done the push because he saw the catapult and he wanted to get his Phallus Lords out of there before the catapult could fire. So, yeah, that's grim. That is really, really punishing, and it's hitting a very expensive unit of these guards. The good news is that because they're so elite, they're unlikely to break. I think that the Isengard archers around them will do so, but he can't take too many more hits like that to such an expensive unit. He won't want to lose that. But from again, it's relatively even in terms of units killed. At this stage, oh, that could have been really bad for the defenders. At this stage, it's still anyone's game, but you'd really want that percentages to be the other way round. As you get closer and closer to the final choke, you really want to be more comfortable with your percentage numbers. And if it was me, where's he got those trolls? Has he already used them? The the trolls, which I didn't particularly like that the Gondor units had, I would have used them to maybe rush the catapult and just push their way and kill off the last of the crew, since I know they've only got two. He's obviously sent his trolls elsewhere, and it doesn't look like there they go, there they are here, and they didn't last long against elites because they aren't a fantastic troll unit. It's going to be starting getting a little bit closer to friendly fire there. I think actually he killed quite a few Phallus Lords. He obviously sent them in against rather expensive units, and they didn't last very long. I think I would have been maybe wiser to take out this catapult, because actually that would probably be quite a reasonable target for the trolls to be able to reach. And two artillery crew members, I think they probably would have finished them off. But now you can see that because of this push, they've now opened themselves up. We can see Blade Masters now going up on the walls, and they'll have to really, because they need to defend the last of the Lazark High. I think we'll probably see the first general death here. I think the Palisade Guard will probably kill them. As the Palace Guard come up, and you can see just the amount of dead archers when Isengard took the walls. Now, from an attacker point of view, they'll be able to place their crossbow units here and fire straight through the hole at very expensive units. And if they don't place units in the hole, they'll be able to rush it with their dwarven units. So it's going to start becoming more and more difficult for the defenders when the crossbow units start appearing and position themselves on the wall here. As we see, the battle still continues for the main gates. Still, I think an opportunity here for the defenders to rack up a good number of kills. Like the crossbows as they stand aren't particularly firing down into them. Again, possibly because of their concern about their own units or otherwise. But there is an opportunity here for them to keep racking up a good, healthy number of kills. And until they actually get rear flanked, which, okay, some Phallus Lords have done so, that we start seeing the first beginnings of a rear flank here. But until this stuff really becomes more prominent, these guys aren't going to particularly break. And you can see he's actually forming up rather than continuing to push against the Fountain Guard. But there's still, I think that there's not many things that the defender can do now with these units. He can maybe try and turtle them back up over here and gather the last of them to make a final stand before they get all outflanked. Or he can maybe send them up onto the walls to support his palace guard. Hard to say. Maybe he could have found a wall to brace himself against and just continue to be a menace and a pain and hold out. These guys, I think they're going to get crossbowed to death. And I think alongside that, I think these guys will follow very quickly. The crossbows are shooting for the blob, but again, the arc, in my personal opinion, the arc really just isn't there for a crossbow. He's not making the most of his shots, I don't feel. And you can see here that they're not really falling. Now, I think he probably is targeting... Well, he could be targeting the artillery crew, but I don't think he is. I think he needs to move him here. I really do. And more than just that, he could shoot the last of these spearmen in the side. It does look like he's going to move the crossbows over. So there you go. He's obviously listening to me now in the recording. And he can start shooting these Warden's Right Tower. I'll get a point-blank shot on these spearmen. And actually, you can see now the Wardens are going to probably have to move if he wants to keep them alive. Probably have to hide themselves behind the wall, but it does look like he is going to turn and he is going to face and he's going to ready up. So hopefully these guys still have ammunition. They actually all have their swords out, so it could be that they're out. Again, I'm not sure why he'd move. I guess it could be, again, another bait, but I think if I had crossbows with ammunition, I'd be moving them up instead. As you can see now, they're tidying up the last of the front gates. The Elves coming over to support the Uruk Hai, who have certainly played a blood sacrifice to take this location. And the Phallus Lords will finish up the last of the Fountain Guard that held there. Now the question is whether they're going to come up here. You can see, yeah, so he did move some of his units up here like I thought he might, get them up onto the wall. Again, try and create a new choke point, support the Palace Guard, who are up against the Blade Masters. Now, without ranged skirmishers involved, I think that the Palace Guard would be able to beat the Blade Masters, but really it partly depends on what units they send up through the small gap here. And I think we'll probably start seeing more and more of the Elven units pile in to try and support, and we'll see a bit of a battle here. And I think sheer numbers will win out unless for some reason the defenders send another unit through this back door to go and support. And it is a possibility they might want to. They may want to send another unit to fight here. Make the most of the fact that they can only have a few units wide, and they do have elite units. There's a chance to get some good kills. Especially the thing that I think is a bit strange is they've had to take units off of here because of the crossbows, which I understand because they're shooting them. But that's a great target to fire over to. Like, even if they just use maybe the Marines to throw into it, but again, they might be saving it for better targets. They're starting to run out of units though, the defenders. They're getting a bit short. They've got a couple of Blade Masters, the Marines, again, more Blade Masters. You can see here, there's the shots coming in. You can see them sort of peppered and sort of the spots of blood coming from them as the crossbows come in and start removing them. I think this is going to be a victory to the attackers. I think the defenders did well. I don't think they did anything particularly out of place. I think that they never really got this catapult working to make the most of it. And I think that probably cost them because I don't think they really got any significant shots with either of their catapult units. As you can see, the Dwarven elites now they'll probably just push past these to go for the more juicy center. Yeah, you can just see that the Dwarven push has begun, and these guys will continue to just make their way in. They've not really got anything to combat. They're actually moving their catapult back. Be half tempted to suggest maybe move the Blade Masters out the way and fire into that blob. Alternatively, retreat slightly, as much as they haven't got the units to really hold it, but they'll have to try. Retreat slightly, let them continue to push, and then fire the catapult in. He really needs to... I mean, this is the only thing that can be the saving grace right now. He doesn't seem to be... Oh, there's the Javies considering throwing, but he stopped them for whatever reason. We'll see whether this catapult can get ready to fire. As you can see, the Isengard catapult of two units remaining still has now winched themselves forward into the battle. And there you go. So this rear gate has now become their ruin as Isengard has sent through his crossbow units to mess around and kick around these catapult crew and these Marines. So this catapult now is not even going to get a shot off. Unfortunately, I think this is probably going to see the end now that they've also lost a general there in the final dying seconds of this battle. I think they'll mop this up relatively comfortably. But from looking at the percentages, you can see here that and they've even lost one. You can see there that the attacker is still relatively healthy. 15% of their force left. I think of that 15%, they probably still have relatively elite units. I think most of the deaths that they've endured came from the Isengard forces that tried to take the front gate against very strong opposition, and the Elves that lost quite a few in the sort of opening sort of stages. I think we'll probably just see a lot of elite dwarves here, except for the miners that took quite a brutal sort of decapitation early. And the Marines are now throwing in. Again, these Blade Masters have come back to try and support this rear section, but you can see them now flowing through, and these crossbows now will fire into the rear, I suspect, of the Blade Masters. You can see there they're starting to pepper them down. There you go, and I think that's gonna be it. So we'll just fast forward through the final moments of the battle, as to not insult the defenders anymore, as I don't think anything too different is going to happen. You can see here he's got the crossbows up on the wall now to fire down into the units as more of them just sort of collapse and the final sort of standing force gets mopped up of the Blade Masters and the Marines. Once again, I'd like to thank everyone for watching. If you would like to join the community, we do have a Discord. We do have a Patreon. Please come join us, play with us. If you want matches, games, we have over 1,000 people part of our Discord now. So we're always looking for new people that enjoy this mod and Lord of the Rings as much as we do. I'd like to thank everybody as well who have given their support and feedback up till now. If you did like the video, please, subscribe, become a follower, like. Any feedback is always welcome. We're always looking to improve and make things better for you guys. And let's just see the final stand of the Blade Masters. Give me your votes now. Do you think that they're going to stay alive for the 3 minutes and it'll be a capture of the town centre, or do you think they'll die before the 3 minutes are up? I have a feeling that they're going to probably die before the timer runs out with only 3 of them, though. They just flood in. Look at them. They're all wanting that final opportunity to get that final kill against the foe that had been so brutal against them. There you go. And here's the final stats. So Gondor there, healthy sort of kills. So 2,500. Ally again, similar amounts. You can see that the elven forces of the High Elves really, really sort of doing really well. Actually, I mean that's some healthy numbers of kills. And again, then the dwarves and Isengard relatively similar to one another. So it wasn't that they weren't effective in terms of killing the opponents. They just weren't able to do it enough. Um, and you can see that actually Isengard still had quite a few units left, but he did have the larger army. Just having a look here, so you can see that the Rangers, one of the Ranger units got 461. I'd be interested to see if that was the Ranger unit that had an opportunity for them to take out earlier down in the lower section, which there was the opportunity to flank round, but I suspect it was probably one on the inner wall. And we can see the Haven Guard, they performed well for themselves, getting close to 300 kills. And that was probably it in terms of large kills. You see more of his Rangers relatively well. I mean, you'd want to see your Archer units doing strong. It does feel like and actually his Marines did very well, 153. That's impressive for a Marine unit. It does look like some of his units that were defending that front gate maybe didn't do as effectively as he wanted. One of the Fountain Guards seemingly getting only 56, and one of the Wardens only getting 60, but the other ones performed well and adequately. And the dismounted Swan Knights, again, doing well for themselves, along with his guards of Osgiliath. One of the units only got 14, though. That's pretty poor. Again, Warden's White Tower. But you can see here, the biggest issue had expensive. He had a catapult there, got 24 kills. That it's just tough. It's tough. All right, thank you everybody, and we will leave it there.